Good morning, members of the media, those who are joining us virtually, and those who are present with us here at the office of the Leader of the Opposition, Port Spain. Welcome to this opposition media briefing under the auspices of the Leader of the Opposition. And I am Saddam Hussein, the Member of Parliament for the constituency of Bartara Sanwan. And joining me this morning is Senator Jayanti Lakshmidiyal, Opposition Senator. Today marks 17 days since this disgraced Attorney General is holding on to office. And I will be dealing with the issues surrounding Mr. Amo and what we know as the Miami scandal in relation to the matters coming out of the Piaco cases. And I just want to remind the general public that had it not been for a front page of the Trinidad Express, Trinidad and Tobago would have been none the wiser about this lying Attorney General scandalizing this fundamental constitutional office in a Miami court. And this morning I want to share a quote with you all. That quote is, "Lying can never save us from another lie." That is from Vacaville Havel. And I made sure that this quote was properly referenced and footnoted. So this morning, before I move on further, I would just like to share a timeline, because I think it's very important that we have a timeline of the events, because it puts the entire matter into context. So let's start from when Mr. Amo was appointed as Attorney General. This was on the 16th of March 2022. And on the 30th of March 2022, Mr. Amo, by his affidavit, notified Sequel Law that he previously represented Mr. Kwaitong. So he told the lawyers since March 30, 2022. On the 11th of April 2022, the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago filed the 5th amended witness list, which included Mr. Amo as a state witness. On the 12th of April 2022, Mr. Amo left the jurisdiction. On the 13th of April 2022, the motion to disqualify Mr. Amo was filed in the court in Miami. On the 24th of April, Mr. Amo then filed an affidavit, the affidavit full of lies, in opposition to the motion to disqualify on the 24th of April 2022. And on the 26th of April 2022, Mr. Kwaitong and Mr. Ferguson filed affidavits in response to Mr. Amo's affidavit. On the 27th of April 2022, the hearing of the motion to disqualify Mr. Amo and the order was made in the matter. On the 1st of June 2022, the notice of appeal was filed in the matter by White and Case. And on the 5th of June 2022, this entire story was revealed in the Sunday Express. And you will remember some of the issues that we had taken with respect to that affidavit that Mr. Amo would have filed on the 24th of April 2022 was that, firstly, he lied on the affidavit by saying that he was a junior counsel when in fact he was a senior counsel. Then he restricted his role by saying that all he was involved in was minimal legal research and that of note-taking, when in fact all of the court records from the Piaco preliminary inquiries would have demonstrated unequivocally that Mr. Amo was actively involved and participating in that particular matter, be it filing submissions, written submissions in the court, making oral submissions in the court. So there was active participation by Mr. Amo in that particular preliminary inquiry, when he would have said that all he was restricted to was the legal research, minimal legal research, and that of note-taking. Then he said that he would have recused himself from the matter on becoming Attorney General. Well, there are about 11 instances in which Mr. Amo would have acted on behalf of the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago as Attorney General while this matter was ongoing. So it is absolutely untrue to say that Mr. Amo would have recused himself from the particular matter, because there are a list or a host, a plethora of involvement with respect to the matter, from being given the status update on the matter, involving the logistics of the matter, named persons to attend mediation, to attend the trial, the payment of legal fees, signing settlement agreements, liaising and speaking to the legal team, logistics from bringing witnesses from Trinidad to Miami, authorizing the dropping of claims brought by the government, submitting witness lists, and also swearing to an affidavit in this particular matter. So those are matters that are in the public domain. Those were the matters that we have revealed and what we have taken issue with. Mr. Amo, on the other hand, decided that, listen, I'm going to take a hands-off approach. I'm going to take a vow of silence on this particular matter. Mr. Amo would have issued 3 press releases on the matter. First one, he would have indicated that he's taking a vow of silence. The second press release, he just reshared the first press release that he would have issued. And then on the 20th of June 2022, Mr. Amo would have then sent out this particular media release. And this is the crux of the matter in which I would like to address you, the members of the media, on this morning. Because this particular statement that I have in my hand, under the hand of Mr. Reginald Amo, SC, Senior Counsel, is that this is a particular document that shows that there is an admission of guilt on his part. Mr. Amo, in this particular media statement, is saying that whatever was on the affidavit is in fact false and untrue. And then he decides to blame it on 2 things. He is blaming it, one, on that he relied on his memory, and that is all he could have recollected at the particular point in time, which would have been the 24th of April 2022. And then he said, well, he wanted to be given an opportunity to clarify his affidavit in the court. So I'll deal with those 2 particular issues in depth this morning. So the first one, with respect to Mr. Amo's excuse that he relied on his memory. So the Piaco preliminary inquiry in Trinidad and Tobago was by far one of the largest cases in our history. So for Mr. Amo to be telling the country that that statement that he made, that he was a junior lawyer or that he was a note-taker, it's very difficult to believe Mr. Amo. It was one of the largest cases. You must have remembered your involvement. I'm sure Jayanti will tell you that she could remember the first case she prosecuted in the DPP's office. I could tell you my first client, I could tell you the case, I could tell you how many witnesses in that matter. And for Mr. Amo to say one of the largest matters in the history of this country, he could not have remembered what his involvement is. I am finding it very difficult to believe what Mr. Amo has said. And the facts are that Mr. Amo was in fact aware of the conflict of interest since the 30th of March. Remember, I took you through the timeline. Because he told Sequel Law represents Trinidad and Tobago in Miami, that he represented Mr. Kwaitong previously. And then when the motion was filed on the 13th of April 2022, that particular motion would have also outlined the instances of the various conflicts of interest. So Mr. Amo would have been aware then what those the particulars of the conflicts of interest. And the motion was in fact about 11 pages long. I have a copy of the motion with me here this morning with respect to that was filed to disqualify Mr. Amo from the court. And at the time, he knew he would have had to file an affidavit in response. So since the 13th of April, Mr. Amo was aware of this motion to disqualify him. He filed the motion, he filed an affidavit on the 24th of April 2022. So that's about 11 days. 11 days Mr. Amo had in order to get the information checked. He could have probably just done a simple Google search and it would have brought up his involvement in the Piaco matter, because there are several articles that show that he was grilling witnesses in cross-examination in those particular matters. Make phone calls. He could have checked with the other attorneys involved in the matter. He was the substantive Attorney General at the time, notwithstanding he was on vacation. You have an entire Office of the Attorney General who could have verified the facts before you put your signature on that particular affidavit. So we are saying that there was no particular due diligence done in that particular matter. Mr. Amo had 11 days in which he could have collected that particular information instead of filing this particular affidavit. So one has to wonder whether or not Mr. Amo is being truthful in this matter. Then the second position is that Mr. Amos said that he wanted to clarify the affidavit because let's go back through the timeline. The 24th of April, he filed his affidavit. On the 26th of April, Mr. Quaitong and Mr. Ferguson filed affidavits in response to Mr. Amo. He said only on checking those affidavits that were filed on the 26th, it refreshed his memory of his involvement in a particular matter. So, on the night of the 26th, the hearing was on the 27th. He said he would have informed Mr. Faris Al-Rawi that he wanted an opportunity to correct the affidavits, to clarify the affidavits. Mr. Al-Rawi was acting as a client representative, and we also take issue with respect to that. I can deal with that later on. And I have this particular document with me here. This here is a 42-page document, which is the transcript of the proceedings on the date. So this was the hearing that was held on the 27th of April 2022. And this is the verbatim notes in which the matter that on the 27th, when the motion of disqualification was heard before the court. And this motion was heard before the Honorable Rimberto Diaz on April 27, 2022. And appearing on behalf of Trinidad and Tobago is Mr. Gregory Grossman, Mr. Edward Davey, Arnoldo Lacayo, and Christopher A. Noel. And the judge in this particular matter, maybe I should read it for you members of the media. The first line of this particular transcript is that the judge is asking the lawyers, are we ready? The state's attorney, Mr. Lacayo, said, yes, judge. The court then asked, who is this gentleman? Mr. Lacayo responds, Mr. Al-Rawi is a minister in Trinidad. He is the client representative. He also was the former Attorney General over the last 7 years. So he's here observing today. So even the court don't even know who Mr. Al-Rawi was when he appeared in that matter on the 27th of April. But getting back to the transcript, Jayanti could also tell you as a practicing lawyer that on the morning before a substantive matter is to be heard, if you realize as an attorney that there is some oversight, there is some error that you need to be addressed before the court hears the substantive matter, an application will normally be made by the lawyers saying, well, Your Honor, my Lord, my Lady, we have received certain information. There is a particular matter that we want to address before the court, before the hearing of the particular matter. On this transcript, not a single application was made by the state's attorney to clarify Mr. Amos' affidavit. In fact, not a single application was made for him to even file a supplemental affidavit to say, well, he wants to correct the previous affidavit. In fact, Mr. Amo also had the opportunity. He could have filed the affidavit on the morning of the hearing if he found that it was so fundamental of an error that he would have made. But no. That did not happen. What happened was, when you look at the transcript, the state's attorney in the matter would have actually relied on parts of the affidavit filed by Mr. Amo. So you cannot come now and say that you wanted to clarify the affidavit when in fact not a single application was made. Not a single objection was raised by the state's attorney, who was sequel law at the time, with respect to Mr. Amos' affidavit that he would have sworn to on the 24th of April 2022. None was filed. Not a single application was made. Not an opportunity for an adjournment to ask the court to stand down the matter. Nothing like that. So it is very difficult to believe that Mr. Amo now comes at this very late stage to say that he wants to clarify the affidavit. And then he said, you know what? Whole day he was sitting in his hotel room waiting for a call. Whole day. He's on vacation. And for the entire day you were sitting in your hotel room waiting for this call from the court for you to clarify these statements. No. Your attorney at law at the time, sequel law, did not raise this particular matter with respect to this impugned affidavit before the Miami court. So Mr. Amo, you probably could fool Rowley, but you cannot fool the United National Congress and the opposition. Because when you issued your press releases, and these press releases were issued on the 8th of June, and then the last one was issued, I believe, on the 4th of June, you did not at all, you had all of those opportunities to say, well, those affidavits were in fact incorrect and false. No. You didn't say it when the matter reached the Express. You didn't say it when you recirculated your press release. You come at a late, afterward, about 17 days later, to tell us that you now wanted to clarify the affidavit. Mr. Amo, you knew that the affidavit was false since then. Why didn't you tell the country this? Why it is that we had to embarrass you? Why it is under public pressure you then had to issue this particular statement? And this statement, Mr. Amo, actually made it worse for you. It made it worse. It raises even more questions with respect to your conduct in this particular Miami matter. And this morning I had the opportunity to look at the Guardian, the Trinidad Guardian, and they had an editorial this morning. And it's a very interesting editorial. The Attorney General's statement does himself no favors. And in this particular Guardian editorial, it refers and asks several pertinent questions, and I'll repeat those questions for you this morning. The first question it asks is, how could any attorney, more so a distinguished senior counsel, not recall his involvement and contributions to one of the biggest legal matters in the country's history? Could the Attorney General not have responded and informed the country about his poor recollection of events weeks ago and quelled some of the disquiet which eventually erupted? Could the Attorney General not have held a news conference and spoken to the public via the media and faced questions about his involvement in the matter instead of hiding behind a media statement? Does Mr. Amo have the moral authority to perform his duties as Attorney General, given that he has now admitted his affidavit was in fact inaccurate? The senior counsel must fully grasp and comprehend his roles and function as the country's Attorney General. Not only is he the legal advisor to the state, but he is also the titular head of the bar of this country, and he must be the first portal of call for honesty, integrity, and sound knowledge of legal affairs. In his position, there is no room for leeway, for poor recollection of facts, and signing an important affidavit with murky memory. Surely he ought to know the weight and significance an affidavit carries, and what the slightest misrepresentation of the truth could spell before endeavoring to do a document while unprepared. With lawyers also now moving on a vote of no confidence in AG Amo, the question is, does he and the Prime Minister truly think he has the moral authority to remain this country's Attorney General? And I would like to proffer an answer to that by saying that, Mr. Amo, it is about time you do the honorable thing and resign as the Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago. And Prime Minister, get back to Trinidad and Tobago and fire the Attorney General if he refuses to tender his resignation. So I thank you very much, and I now hand you over to Senator Jayanti Lakshmi.
Good morning, members of the media. Thank you for joining us, both some of you physically and the rest of you via the link. I want to firstly join in what my colleague has said and fully endorse it. You know, as an attorney, Saddam and I both know how important it is to have respect for the office of the Attorney General. And really, it is not about having respect for the office, but also having someone who is respectable in that office. And everything that Saddam has said today, it boils down to one thing. Even if you believe the statements made by Mr. Amo in his most recent statement, the critical thing that we can't lose sight of is that an Attorney General sat down in a hotel room somewhere in Europe, and a former Attorney General sat down on a virtual link, knowing that there was false evidence before court whilst a hearing was going on, and it was not corrected. And I think that is very shameful. It is disgraceful, and I fully agree with what was said today in the Guardian editorial, that they have lost the moral authority to really hold that office, such an important constitutional office in this country. But speaking of shameful and disgraceful, it seems that is a trend that is taking place in this government right now, and I want to address a couple of issues that have come forward with respect to Minister Foster Cummings as well as other issues related to the crime situation in the country right now. We have seen, I think we have had one of the bloodiest long weekends that we've had in a very long time. And although we have seen a sort of a nonchalant approach to it from those in authority and those responsible for the safety and security of citizens, whether they know it or not, I think it is important for us to address those matters, because this is all interlinked. There's a connection between the type of government you have and what you see happening day to day in the lives of people in Trinidad and Tobago and the things affecting their lives, including crime. But let us deal with some of the other, what I consider to be shameful things. It's a lot about taking responsibility. I wanted to do some quotes too today, but I wanted to make sure and take my time to make sure I could reference them, so I'm not going to quote too much. But I would say that whilst Mr. Armour he decided to take an oath of silence, his cabinet colleague, Minister Foster Cummings, has apparently taken an oath to try to silence me. Because while I was sitting here, and many of you will have seen me on my phone, I was just served with a notice of appeal that he is going to the Court of Appeal and try to continue his campaign to silence me so that I will not speak about matters related to him. Because in the eyes of the PNM and the cabinet led by Dr. Keith Rowley, it appears that nobody must expose issues affecting this country, despite the fact that the police have now confirmed that they have active investigations going on into some of the matters that I raised. They still feel that we should not be able to speak about it. But we will deal with that. As I said last night, I leave those things in the hands of my attorney, very competent attorney that I have representing me, and so I will not be bothered by those things. I'm here to deal with the issues that affect people and what people want to hear about. Let's start off with the concept of dishonesty. Some people have started to, I think, when you have a situation where government ministers lie up and lie and lie, and I had a nice quote about lying doesn't correct lies. Sometimes they have been training since university in terms of how to be dishonest. And then when they are faced with the facts and they are asked questions, they try to palm it off like it was nothing big. So having raised the issue of one government minister being debarred for an entire year from completing his postgraduate studies in all things government at the University of the West Indies, the minister went to the media and talked about an oversight in footnoting, whereas something was in the bibliography, and it was just a mistake and it was dealt with at the university. But added to that, the minister attempted to say that when he re-enrolled in the program, someone keep raising it and so on, and therefore he left. I can't pour me one story, that it's always that they are always the victims, and somebody, they are always trying their best, and they are man on the move, and they are trying to do their best, and that somebody's always fighting them down. Well, I have spoken to many people who, as one of our colleagues would say, was on the compound at the time, and they would give you a totally different view and a totally different version of what occurred at that point in time. Because what I am to understand is that there were two instances while Minister Cummings was enrolled in the first semester of this postgraduate degree where he was found to be committing acts of plagiarism. One instance was detected where there was absolutely no citation, and of all things, the course I understand was something to do with public administration. Of all things, a man who is now in charge of running a ministry was plagiarizing work in a course called public administration. And in that public administration course, there was no referencing done, no footnoting done with the items that had been plagiarized, the portion of his paper, and it was not in the bibliography either. And that the lecturer in that particular course raised the matter, and then another member of faculty came forward and said, well, this also occurred in my course, in a separate course. And both instances, in that case, I think there was a reference in the bibliography, but it had not been properly cited and footnoted. And anybody who has undertaken any sort of academic work will know that all of that is just a distraction. The fact of the matter is there's a proper way in which you cite academic material. Now, why is this important? It may be lost on the majority of the population, but it is what you call dishonesty. It is academic dishonesty, and I am very happy that someone spoke to several senior and well-respected members of faculty at UWI who described the gravity of the situation. And what I am told is when both instances were drawn to the attention of the campus registrar, there was a panel that was convened and that they had to hear the matter and so on. And the sanction imposed at that point in time, which reflects the severity of the infraction committed by the student, was actually the second highest penalty that could be imposed on a student. The only thing worse that they could have done is to expel him completely from the program, right? So, and anybody who went to UWI or to any university would know that there's a process and procedures to be followed. This is not some fight-kivai, type of thing that they do. They take these things very seriously. It is almost like an inquiry, like a tribunal that is set up like a court hearing almost. You have an opportunity to make representations. And it is our information that in both those situations, Minister Cummings was found to be guilty of committing an act of 2 instances of plagiarism, and he was asked to leave. I have the official transcript, portion of which, an unofficial transcript, let me be clear, it's an unofficial transcript because an official transcript could only go from a university to a university. But this is what was published, I think, on the online version of the Express. And the truth of the matter is, there's elements of truth in what Minister Cummings says, in that he did go back to university after his 1 year of having to be withdrawn due to that sanction being imposed on him. And he says that he decided to leave because a particular lecturer was pursuing the matter further. Well, from what I see here, that is not the case. The point is that Minister Cummings was unsuccessful in all 3 courses that he undertook in the 2009-2010 semester 2, and that I think that may have had something to do with the reason why he withdrew. So he did another year at university, but I don't think that he passed that year. So I really do feel that as a minister who has responsibility for youth development in the country, that the minister ought to be a little bit more responsible in his statements. I don't think that the right message to be sending to the youth of this country is that when you are caught or that when you are exposed in some sort of academic dishonesty, that you must now try to deflect blame onto. It's almost like he's making it sound as though some particular lecturer had an issue with him, and that does not appear to be the case from the documents that we are reviewing here and from the recollection of persons who, as I said, were around at the time. So when you start off on that footing from way back when, and it raises the question, because when I spoke on the Monday Night Forum, I told you that when Minister Cummings was placed on the slate of Dr. Keith Rowley to run for the General Secretary of the PNM, which is a very high-ranking position, that is almost like the CEO of the party, the UNC raised the matter, and it didn't get much attention. We said, look, is there someone that is, who you have there that has some credibility issues because of their history at a university? And no one took it on. But I want to find out tonight if Dr. Rowley is not concerned about the quality of people that he has, not within his party alone, but that he puts into his cabinet. Because since 2014, when these matters were raised, Minister Cummings has continued to be elevated. He has continued to be elevated within the party and within government to becoming a full member of cabinet. And this is in the face of allegations of plagiarism at UWI, which brings his academic qualifications and so on into question. We are also forced to question, his credibility, his honesty, whether or not you could trust a person like this to hold a cabinet position. But now we've also heard about reports from the special branch that came about in 2019. So if you are following the history of Foster Cummings and his history as he has moved up within the PNM and has moved up within the government, there's a lot that is left a lot that's left to be desired. Over the weekend, as I said, we had a number of instances of murders taking place. And I saw a video of the Commissioner of Police outside of the Brian Lara Stadium. The Brian Lara Stadium, which was built to be a big sporting event, has now turned into a fet venue. We cannot attract anybody to come here and play cricket and who could blame them when people are being shot up and riddled with bullets right outside of the Brian Lara Stadium. And I saw an interview with the Commissioner of Police, and he's saying a number of things. Well, firstly, I don't understand when he talks about murder rates being within parameters. Apparently, there's now an acceptable rate of murder. We have an acceptable amount of murders that take place. In the country that I grew up in, and the way that I grew up, and the way most of us, I think, believe we should operate, is that there's no acceptable murder. But there apparently appears to be an acceptable rate of murder for this Commissioner of Police. And, what he had to say yesterday about we need a holistic approach. And in speaking to the media outside of the Brian Lara Stadium, he talks about anti-gang legislation, and he they're trying to use the anti-gang legislation, but he wants the anti-gang legislation to be strengthened. I want to tell the Commissioner of Police right now that they have failed to demonstrate that they could use, or that they are using the anti-gang legislation to deal with gang violence. And the reason why the opposition did not support the draconian anti-gang legislation, when you are passing laws, you have to look at the balancing of the effect of the law and how much impact it can have against the incursion upon the rights of citizens. And if the TTPS are not using the law, they produce absolutely almost no results in all of the years that we had the anti-gang legislation. The government decided to ignore the opposition and push an anti-gang bill through without the special majority. Well, you have that now. What is taking place? Well, let me tell you what is taking place. What is taking place is you have the front page of The Guardian, an article captioned, "They Want Me Dead." And you have a very interesting and very, I would say, troubling story of a young man who is in the United Kingdom, who says that he is being targeted by a gang leader who has links to a government minister. I want to tell you today that I have received and I have perused correspondence passing between the Home Office in the United Kingdom and this gentleman by the name of Calvin David Greenwich. I cannot disclose this document to the media because it contains very sensitive and highly confidential details about this individual and his family, because he is actually so afraid to return to Trinidad and Tobago because he has been shot at 3 times. They have attempted to take his life, and he admits that he names a particular person who he believes is targeting him. And I want to say I was most troubled when I received this correspondence and I looked at it, but I am committed to asking the questions today. And I want to ask the Commissioner of Police, when he read this story, if he has made any effort to locate or to make contact with this individual and to find out what has happened with the reports that he said he made to the police. Because we are not hearing anything about the special branch report, except that they want to know how it leaked, because that is their concern. They are not speaking about the contents of the special branch reports that named a particular gang person with gang affiliations known to the police and a government minister and contracts. They are not talking about that at all. But I will tell you that in the correspondence passing between this individual and the Home Office, that the same person is named as a gang leader in this correspondence. And when someone gives an interview to the media, not to the UNC, not to the opposition at all, they went to the media and said that they are afraid to return to this country because not only of the gang leader, the person who he says allegedly is a gang leader and who wants to kill him, but that person also has links to a government minister. I have to say that we are living in a time now where every citizen should be worried if the police are not paying sufficient attention to this. Because this is mind-boggling. It is extremely mind-boggling that a citizen can come to the media and say on the front page that he is afraid of a gang leader because of their connections to a government minister. That a special branch report from 2019 says, a special branch report, yes, it is intelligence, but it is not intelligence collected by some retiree that they pick up like what Dr. Rowley did to go and investigate firearm users' licenses, who has no authority. It is intelligence collected by the intelligence gathering arm of the TTPS, who is the legitimate, I think the only, together with the SSA, the only legitimate intelligence gathering arm of law enforcement in this country. And that's, the Prime Minister had that report from 2019. And what is he doing about it? You see, ladies and gentlemen of the media, you have to understand something about gangs. We have a country right now that is ripe for gang recruitment because there is poverty, there are no jobs, and so gang life becomes very attractive. And what keeps gangs going is financing. And what keeps gangs being financed, and it has been reported in the media over the years, is a lot of it has to do with state contracts. And we are very concerned about that. The opposition has painstakingly gone through a history of questions linked to contracts being given out to persons close to or affiliated with government ministers. And now you have the names, the same names keep popping up in special branch, in the newspaper. It has now reached London. It is now on the doorstep of the Home Office in London that gangs with links to government ministers in Trinidad and Tobago have citizens of Trinidad and Tobago living in fear and seeking asylum outside of this country because they are not willing to return to this country because they are so fearful. because of the power that these gangs have. And why are these gangs so powerful? Well, if you have connections as high up as the cabinet, then that leaves much to be desired. Now, and it really it empowers the gangs, and it leaves the citizens of this country living, I believe, in fear. I've had many people coming to me and telling me, look, you better be careful when you're talking about these matters. But we in the opposition, we feel it is our duty to bring these matters out and to ask questions. And all that they could do is run to the court to try to silence us because they don't want to talk about these things and they don't want to answer it. You have the Commissioner of Police, after I think I spoke about the matter involving Venture Credit Union, and then another front page talking about the FIU flagging $4.4 million in deposits. The Commissioner of Police has come out and actually said and confirmed that the TTPS is still investigating financial transactions to dealing with contracts and state companies, and that they went to the court for a production order, and that is an ongoing investigation.
The order was granted.
Yes, and the order was granted, even though they tried to intervene and so on. And we saw those documents, and we all read that story in the Express. I remember when the partnership administration was in government, and every Monday morning, Dr. Rowley, as opposition leader, used to jump up and ask for somebody to step aside until an investigation was completed. And somebody had to be fired by the Prime Minister, the then Prime Minister, Mrs. Kamala Prasad-Bissessar, because questions were being asked about them. We are asking pertinent questions, and we are not here like with Emailgate waving around documents that have no substance and that have been proven to be fake. We are here with legitimate documents. No one has refuted that the special branch report is real. No one has refuted that the documents that went to the court, that the police took to the court to get their production order to investigate Minister Cummings and 3 companies linked to his family, that they are fake. They have confirmed that there's a real investigation. No one has denied the large deposit just on the eve of the general election going into the account of Minister Cummings. He attempts to give an explanation, and I want to address that very briefly. But he attempted to give an explanation about taking a loan in his personal name for the company which he was a part of and so on. Ladies and gentlemen, a while ago, some months ago I believe it was, the opposition leader addressed this. Minister Cummings, we had the documents to show, and we have shown it before. He had judgments against him in 2002 for not paying a debt to RBTT Bank back then. By 2017, there was a deed of mortgage registered where 4 parcels of land was mortgaged to Venture Credit Union, and a loan of some $14 million was taken. That loan, the release of that mortgage was taken, was filed and with the registry sometime in 2021. Minister Cummings is attempting to say that he took a loan in his personal name for the use of the family business. Now that raises all sorts of other questions about the propriety of the actions of the credit union and so on, which incidentally falls under the supervision of the Ministry of Youth and National Development. I don't know how credit unions end up there, but that is where it is right now. It used to be under Labour because it was Labour and Cooperative Development as the ministry. It has gone to his ministry. So the person who is directly responsible from the cabinet for the Commissioner of Cooperative Development and who also has to supervise credit unions is saying that the rules of the Cooperative Societies Act, where you cannot make a loan to a non-member, which is a company, is saying that this loan was facilitated to him in his private capacity on behalf of the business. Okay, let's take it a step further. In that document, they're talking about, he said that they had to assign contracts. How did you know that you would be getting a contract from MTS in 2020 to assign to Venture Credit Union at the time? You could not have known that. Is there some reason that you are guaranteed that Pical and Rivulet Investments and so on are guaranteed contracts? I don't know. I'm asking the question. But when you see history of the number of contracts being given to these companies, it is a serious red flag that we have to pay attention to. When it is you look at the document as well and the mortgage, it speaks nothing about MTS contracts. It actually says that the security for the loan, the 4 parcels of land and the shares being held at the credit union, which is normal for a credit union. And then there's a clause in that loan agreement that says, I am employed by way of HEC contracts, and if I were to stop being employed here, well, I authorize the HEC to now take the balance of the loan owing and pay it back to the credit union. That is what the documentation says. So all this story about, I was taking the loan and I agreed that they take my contracts as security. You cannot give a contract that is granted to you on an emergency basis in 2020 2019 into 2020, January 2020, and assigned it to a credit union to take a loan in 2017. And if that is what is taking place at credit unions in this country, well then I think we have a lot to investigate. We have a whole commission of inquiry into the conduct of credit unions. We have been trying to work out a credit union bill to strengthen the regulation of credit unions. And one of the critical things that came up in that inquiry was the fact that loans were given to non-members. Exactly what is happening here, what is spoken about here, that led to the demise of the Hindu credit union. The credit union bill that is waiting to be dealt with deals with issues just like that. When you have a minister sitting in the cabinet, and all these excuses that come up over and over and over about, well, the minister trying to help this one, and he's a good man, and I sit on a plane and a man tell me he's a selling market and all that thing. Plenty of us sat on a roti shop. My grandmother planted rice in the lagoon, Minister Hines, which I'm very proud of. And all of us, nobody landed here in wealth. Many people struggle, many people sell in the market. That doesn't justify committing academic dishonesty. It does not justify being able to bend the rules that you are supposed to be enforcing. And it certainly does not justify the police. And this is where I want to focus today. That the police seem to be giving a free pass and to be ignoring the serious issues facing this country. Because gang violence, what else you might say, well, whoever getting contracts and linked to gangs and this man has to run away to the United Kingdom, I mean, that's not my problem. When you want to drive on the highway, which I drive almost every day, and people are being shot up outside of a stadium where people are going to a party or whatever it is, it affects every single life in this country. When people look at Trinidad and Tobago as a place to come and invest, but they read that you had 10 murders over one long weekend, it will affect our economy, which in turn affects every single life of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And so I'm saying today that it is time that we get some answers on these questions. They cannot take vow of silence, and they cannot try to silence us, because these are very important issues. The police need to say what is happening with these investigations. They are always quick to send out press releases and to talk about, things when it affects others. But we never hear about things affecting government ministers where they are named in reports. They had a press conference the other day and they're talking about under what section of the law someone who leaked the special branch report could be charged. Let me tell you something, nobody in the country cares about that. Nobody in the country cares how the report was leaked. I don't know how it got out there, and I don't want to know. What I want to know is, what are you doing about it? What are you doing to solve the issue of the inextricable links between gang financing, state contracts, persons named in reports, and now persons being named in correspondence to the Home Office in the United Kingdom, and the link to ministers in government and what these people are saying? They may just be allegations, yes, but it is the duty of the TTPS to investigate so that you could give citizens of this country some sense of security and that they could see that you are doing something about it. When you sit down there and you talk about you data mining and you analyzing trends, and for every day you waste analyzing trends, somebody is getting richer, somebody is getting more powerful, and there's a proliferation of gang violence in this country because the TTPS is not acting. And that is unacceptable. It is completely unacceptable at this point in time. And I want to tell the Commissioner of Police that he is not a member of Parliament and he should stop thinking about legislation. Legislation is for us to deal with in the Parliament. His job is to do police work. So that he needs to stop doing parliamentary work and start doing police work. Police work is to investigate. That is what police work is. And not to think about the acceptable parameters of murders. Because we, the people of this country, and the opposition speaks for 300 and something thousand members of this country who voted for us, and we speak for all citizens of this country, regardless of whether they voted or they didn't vote for us or whoever. We do not think that there's any acceptable parameters for murders in this country or any type of crime. And so the Commissioner needs to stop thinking that he could rely on pre-COVID statistics and so on to justify his inaction in treating with this very serious matter. And that is what I think I want to end with today, and I think we can take some questions now from the media.
May I go first?
Yeah, sure.
In relation to the statement issued by the Attorney General on the 20th of June 2022, the particular sentence that he used where he spoke about wanting to correct his previous affidavit, and he made reference to the transcript. But the inference to be drawn is it that the Attorney General, who was the client representative, that is Mr. Faris Al-Rawi, and Sikor Law would have ignored his desperate plea correct the record?
Well, if that is so, someone is in dereliction of duty. The thing about it is that if Mr. Amo was so concerned about the errors in his first affidavit and that he raised it with Mr. Al-Rawi, that he wanted it to be corrected, and Mr. Al-Rawi, I don't know if he informed or he didn't inform sequel law, we don't know. The fact is, the transcripts reflect that the matter was not raised with the court. So that really goes back to whether or not whether sequel law was aware that Mr. Amo wanted to correct it, or in fact whether or not Mr. Amo in fact would have even told Mr. Al-Rawi about this in the first place, because Mr. Amo issued a statement on the 4th of June. The 4th of June, he issued a statement. On the 8th of June, he never raised it. Mr. Amo had the night before the trial, the matter being heard, to file a supplemental affidavit. It was not done. Mr. Amo had the opportunity between the date he filed his affidavit to the date of the hearing to have his office fact check and verify what he would have deposed on affidavit. That was not done. So it really begs the question whether or not he really wanted to clarify his affidavit.
I think one of the things that we need to remember is that the initial set of statements coming out of the government on this matter indicated that they thought the court was completely wrong and that they were appealing the matter. That is where their focus was. Now, I want to say today that I find it is curious and a bit concerning and disappointing that the government is seeking to appeal a decision of a judge, knowing full well that they have false evidence before the judge. Is part of the appeal that they want to now correct that false evidence that was given, because Mr. Amo has admitted that his affidavit is false and that it wasn't corrected at the time of the hearing. So if you are filing an appeal, and we have confirmed that they have filed the appeal, so they are actually appealing a decision knowing full well that they put in an affidavit that contains false statements, false evidence. I mean, that is very concerning. I think that is something that Mr. Amo should address immediately, whether or not it is wise for the state, given what he has said here, to proceed with this appeal against this decision.
And a follow-up question to that is that the pursuit or the allegations or the supposition that the opposition has been making that the Attorney General may have committed perjury in his first affidavit, has there been any move by the opposition to raise this matter with the authorities in the United States to launch an investigation? And if so, when was that done and what has been done?
So the duty of the opposition is to ensure that this matter is properly ventilated within the Parliament. That is where that is our place of employment, at the seat of democracy. We have confirmed that we have filed a motion of no confidence in Mr. Amo. Under the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, I have seen attorneys at law would have filed a requisition with the Law Association, also calling for a no confidence motion. So those are the steps that has been taken in Trinidad and Tobago. With respect to the U.S. authority, we are still under, that matter is still under review, and once there is a particular position on it, we will inform you of it.
What have you all experienced attorneys, and you would have perused the Legal Profession Act, and you will fully know that any vote of no confidence against the Attorney General wouldn't attract the same types of sanctions as a regular attorney, and the Law Association would just have to make a recommendation to the Prime Minister, as well as any vote of no confidence in the House, which you all don't have the majority, of course, would just be nominal in that sense, and would be a matter for the Prime Minister to use his discretion. Are you confident that the Prime Minister will use his discretion at this time to make a decision in relation to the Attorney General?
If after this damning evidence facing Mr. Amo, Mr. Amo's admission that he has given false statements to a U.S. court is not enough for the Prime Minister to fire Mr. Amo, I mean, it really questions the ability of the Prime Minister and whether or not anyone in that cabinet is holding anything over the Prime Minister for him not to relieve Mr. Amo of his constitutional responsibilities as Attorney General. Attorneys General in this country before have been fired for far less than what Mr. Amo is currently facing right now. And I think the duties on the Prime Minister, even before the Law Association has this motion before it and it's being heard, even before the matter reaches the Parliament floor for a debate, I think Mr. Amos should resign. And if he doesn't, well, the Prime Minister, nobody knows where the Prime Minister is right now. In fact, last night Dr. Gopi Singh gave us an indication that if you go for a routine medical, it takes about 1 day, 1.5 days. And the Prime Minister has been out for weeks seeking medical attention. I think it's time the Prime Minister comes home and really fire this man, because clearly Mr. Amo doesn't want to go anywhere.
So, I want to just touch on the point that Ms. Ashmedial would have made in relation to crime. You made reference to under the PP and the use of the anti-gang legislation. It is in the public domain that hundreds of young men were arrested under the Anti-Gang Act during the state of emergency in 2011, and the police would have not done their homework or provided any evidence to support the charges in that case, right? What do you think are the solutions that the opposition can offer to the police, the system, in making strong cases or coming up with watertight cases to arrest potential gang leaders and gang members to give the country a sense of security?
All right. Well, firstly, if you understand the law, is that every offense that you can commit or that the Anti-Gang Act speaks to committing as a gang is already an offense in the books, whether it is robbery, whether it is kidnapping, whether it is murder, whatever it is. It's there. The solution to solving crime, it doesn't lie in laws that give you powers which, as you have pointed out, in some cases police may have abused. Now, I want to say something else. What the courts rule on is whether or not the police have reasonable or sufficient cause sometimes to arrest someone. That is the critical issue there, all right? How the police exercise their discretion is not something that you could legislate. That is an operational issue. The issues facing law enforcement in this country are operational, and there are resource issues as well. Do you know what would help address the crime situation if we could get secure convictions? Because right now what we have, I am seeing people walking out and posing in front of the Hall of Justice every day after spending 10 years, 7 years, 9 years awaiting trial and so on. And the fact of the matter is that we have a very low detection rate and an even lower conviction rate. And that deals with the quality of evidence. I have been speaking extensively on the need to move away from witness evidence towards DNA, CCTV, and scientific, irrefutable forms of evidence collection that would secure convictions and allow you to also detect people. When you speak to witnesses, and then people like this have to they run into the UK because they're afraid to kill them, and they get killed because of the kind of connections that gang leaders have. They are unreliable. You cannot convict people, you cannot arrest and convict, you cannot depend on the witnesses, and I don't blame the witnesses. They have reasons to live in fear, right? But the point of the matter is that if you had a greater emphasis on resources for scientific evidence collection, then you might actually make a dent in the crime situation, and that is something that you need no legislation for. All of the legislation is there. All of the legislation to deal with the admissibility of video footage is there. All of the legislation to deal with the collection and processing of DNA is there. I asked some questions in the Parliament, I think it was earlier this year or last year, about the processing of samples, which is not as good as DNA, but it's all sorts of other samples and ballistics and so on that could assist, that are essential to the progress of court matters in the system. And there were some 16,000 samples awaiting processing because one part of the lab, the roof had fallen down, they never decided to outsource anything and so on. So you have 16,000 cases that are just languishing in the courts in Trinidad and Tobago. And that's another issue. You cannot expect that matters take such a lengthy period of time to move through the system and that you will secure a conviction at the end of it all, because people simply get fed up, they get frustrated, technicalities arise, police go on leave, they die, witnesses die for natural or unnatural causes, and so matters are falling through the cracks. So we are not able to properly deal with detection and conviction in this country, and that is a serious matter facing us, and you need, as I said, no legislation for that. Okay? Instead of spending $55 million to pay some firm from the UK to come down here and SRP and them eating ham, lamb and jam down at the Hyatt for a week on the taxpayers' bill, they should invest some of those resources in our proper forensic sciences center. And if the forensic sciences center still has to be built, I don't think a blade of grass cutters yet on the land that they've identified for the new forensic sciences center that they keep talking about that they're going to build, right? But in the meantime, there are resources outside that you can procure to assist with processing those things. And that is where the emphasis needs to be. $65 million can go a long way to helping the TTPS in their fight against crime. But then when you sit down looking at statistics and trends, but what we need are boots on the ground and actual real police work, which again requires resources. So that is the advice that the opposition, I think, would give to, and we have been giving repeatedly over and over inside and outside of the parliament, to the government and to the TTPS.
And if I could just probably share some statistics with you,
yes,
if you don't mind. This year I asked a question in the parliament and I got a written response with respect to the performance of the Anti-Gang Act. So for the year 2022, there's 134 gangs in Trinidad. For the year 2022, there are 1,462 gang members in Trinidad and Tobago. I asked about the number of arrests, and this is the interesting question. This is the response. I'm going to read it verbatim, so I'm referencing here, right? These are not my words. With respect to Part C, which is the part that deals with arrest, the number of arrests made under the Anti-Gang Act for the period September 2015 to February 2022 was neither documented nor recorded by the TTPS, as accounts were kept only of the persons charged under the Act. Anyone knows what that means? Because you can't tell us how many arrests were made under the Anti-Gang Act. Then I asked how many charges were laid under the Anti-Gang Act. For the year 2022, 1. Then I asked how many convictions for the Anti-Gang Act for the period September 2015 to December 2017, and there were no convictions under the Act. No convictions under the Anti-Gang Act. No.
The statistics in the anti-gang, well, every time we ask the anti-gang, it looks like an offer from the CPO, only 0011000. They have never passed the threshold of 0 and 1 when it comes to any statistic. And yet they are saying that they need this legislation to fight gangs. You've had the legislation. You have had the legislation, and we have not seen the impact of it. So, you know, I don't know how legislation is going to help you investigate when you have a report from your own intelligence collecting arm that you are not acting on. Alright? Legislation can't help you do that. Legislation cannot help fix that.
On a related arm of the criminal justice system, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. Both of you all will have experience there. There are over 100 and something vacancies at that office. And that has been so for, I've been saying, maybe a year or more. The Judicial Legal Service Commission, which is chaired by the Chief Justice, has been very slow to fill those vacancies. And from my understanding, there's going to be another exodus from that office very soon, where the top tier will be moving on to the High Court bench. Who appoints the High Court bench? The Chief Justice. So is the opposition aware of this very worrying and troubling situation where the main prosecutorial arm of the state is being starved of resources, and the Attorney General, who is the administrative arm of the cabinet that deals with the office of the DPP, does not seem to. I don't know if that is a matter on his priority agenda. So it ties in with the crime situation and the conviction situation and all those things. So I just want to know what, if you all are aware of that situation, and what, if anything, that you all are doing about it.
Well, it's impressive that you have made the link between the resourcing of the DPP's office and all that, because it appears that nobody in the government has made that link. Whenever we speak about the DPP's office, one of the issues facing that office, particularly with filling vacancies, is not just a matter of the JLSC, but it's also a matter of physical space and accommodation for that office. Before the 2020 general election, I saw Minister, then Attorney General Rari, gallerying himself as usual, cutting ribbon and so on, at an office space in Port of Spain that is yet to be occupied because there are some security issues to be worked out. So in early 2020, they I don't know if they're paying rent for that building because it was handed over. Keys, shake hand, photographs, media, the full shebang. And up to now, they can't move the DPP's office into a larger space, which will facilitate bringing on more members of staff. In San Fernando, we heard that they rented accommodation at Gulf City Mall. Every time we go through Standing Finance Committee, Saddam, you would remember, we see an allocation for furnishing those offices and rental and so on. Up to now, they are still in the same building that I left them in 2010 in San Fernando. So that is one issue. The issue of persons, everybody wants career advancement, and so I'm happy to hear that some of my former colleagues might be moving on to the bench and so on. I congratulate them if that is in fact the case. Everybody wants career advancement, and you cannot blame people for that. But there's absolutely no, I think, priority being given to filling vacancies while people are moving on. And in order to fill the vacancies, you have to have the infrastructure that is there. You see, whilst people like the Commissioner of Police will go on to what he wants to take a holistic approach to the murder rate and all of that, you need a holistic approach to organizational planning. You need a holistic approach to resourcing different agencies because they all work together. And as I said, you have made the connection between the slow pace of justice, the crime situation being out of control, and the resourcing of the prosecutorial arm of the state. But like the government, they're making a connection because they are not. They say that we open up 100 more courts down at the waterfront. But who coming to do the work in the courts if you have no prosecutors? Who is coming to staff the courts? In the judiciary, I think they are also a bit short-staffed. I know that they had issues with the pandemic they have made, and I would say that I have been impressed with the speed at which the judiciary was able to sort of try to shift during the pandemic to online filing and managing virtual meetings and so on. I'm sitting here right now, I'm getting links that I have to log on to in a short while for virtual hearings. They have done some work and they have made some progress. I always give credit where it is due, and I do believe that they have done a substantial amount of work during the pandemic. But at the end of the day, life is returning to normal. You're seeing facts looking like, I think, bigger than pre-COVID taking place. But life returning to normal cannot just be about fetting. You have to have a physical presence in a courtroom because you cannot do certain types of trials without, physical people being there. So yes, where are we getting the prosecutors from? Would they have enough? We don't have enough CAT reporters in Trinidad to staff the courts. That causes delays. When you are going to file an appeal, for example, sometimes you're waiting for an extended period of time to get a transcript because we do not have enough CAT reporters in the courts. So the hiring of staff is one part of it. The government, through the Ministry of the Attorney General, has an obligation to both the DPP's office and the judiciary to provide the financing and the funding for physical infrastructure. And they need to start doing that. I heard the Prime Minister at one of his conversation things talking about he wants the judiciary giving them all the money they want and what are they doing with it and all of that. Well, you giving them the money and you spending the money. So if you don't know what they're doing, well, who will know? He is the person who's supposed to answer to the taxpayers of this country about what is happening with the money. And that, and that they have to address things. So it is not simply up to the government to deflect these issues onto somebody else and make it somebody else's problem. When they speak about an exodus, a mass exodus of persons out of the DPP office, it's almost like they're trying to say that, well, you shouldn't leave. You should stay there. But, the salaries are not competitive as they would be in private practice sometimes. The working conditions are extremely poor. I would say the type of accommodation they are given, the cramped offices, what you have to do. Saddam and I think, the best place to say about the types of stress that you are under as a prosecutor and the type of the hours that you have to work and the types of things that you have to deal with when you are there. And so we have to do better by them if we want the criminal justice system to work.
Just to put in context, I can tell you, while I was there, I shared one office space with 3 other prosecutors. 3 of us shared one desk and one computer at the DPP's office.
I don't think anybody wants to share with me, so I have my own office.
And that is how difficult it has been. And there will always be a high turnover rate. And Janky, I don't know if you would remember, while you were there, the DPP's office were asking for something called a risk allowance because of how there's a certain level of risk with the job. And there has never been any conversation with that particular office with respect to revising their terms and conditions because they perform, as you will well know, Darren, a specialized function according to other public officers in the judiciary, in the JLSC also.
I want to add to that one thing as you raise it. I could talk all over the DPP's office, Saddam and I. When the partnership administration was there, we came up, well, not we, I wasn't there at the time, but I remember because I was part of the conversation for the strengthening of the DPP's office. And I was a technical person at the time working at the FIU, and so it's all interlocked. And I saw the structure. And there was a very big structure built out with specialized divisions, people who could be specialized in fraud, people who could be specialized in sexual offenses. We have spoken at length, both of us, about the need for specialized units to deal with sexual offenses and violence against gender-based violence and so on, for courts and in the prosecution. And all of that, what happens when you change government? They take it and they pelt it in the bin. It was an excellent idea. But they prefer to pick up the $35 million and bring in some specialist prosecutor from the UK to investigate fraud in Trinidad, rather than having a division of the DPP's office devoted to that type of work, who would work hand in hand with the ACIB, the fraud squad, and the FIB, and would deal with all of the fraud and financial crimes. And that is what you need, and that's what you have in every other, serious country in the world. When people say talk about Trinidad as not a real place, is when you hear things like 3 people sharing one office, trying to make, to carry the weight of the criminal justice system. And I agree entirely with that issue about the risk allowance when they were asking for it, and I would like to know what has happened to those types of, recommendations. I went to lunch with a client the other day, and a workman, a driver or something, who came to drop something off to him, is someone that I prosecuted for murder. Could you believe that? 10 years after I left that office, I'm sitting having lunch in a restaurant.
You remember the client?
I remember the clients. I have not Mr. Amo. As soon as I see that man heard his name, I said, oh my God, I prosecuted this man for murder. And of course he got off after spending some, 10 years in prison or something, and he got off. Why he got off, I don't know. But the fact of the matter is he was a person charged by the police that I sat there and I prosecuted for murder. And this man came to drop off some files at our business lunch. Right, so that is the type of life you live as a prosecutor, right? The Ministry of the Attorney General is spending, extensive amount of money to appeal a decision on bail to the Privy Council. The type of money that the prosecutors in the DPP office will never see in their lifetime is what SRP, Kate, and other lawyers are collecting to go to the thing, because they believe that once you could tell somebody, look, whether you're guilty or you're innocent, no bail for you, that is a solution to crime. That is not a solution to crime. And again, resource allocation. It is not the absence of resources, it is the allocation of resources is the issue in this country. Because their priority is giving briefs to people to go and fight against, particularly when I think the lawyers on the other side are associated with the UNC or the opposition or not with them, then, let's just say. They will give those briefs and they want to fight these matters all the way to the Privy Council, but they are not focusing on the critical issues facing the criminal justice system here now. They think that restricting bail, which everyone agrees is not a function, well, I shouldn't say everyone, but the High Court and not the High Court, the Court of Appeal here agreed is not a function of the legislature or the executive, but a judicial function. They decided they want to take it to the Privy Council, the same Privy Council that they want to get rid of. Because they believe they have so much faith in our local judges and so on, but they will not accept the decision of the Court of Appeal on the issue of bail. They want to go to the Privy Council to deal with it, and so they have spent an extensive amount of money on legal fees to take that to the Privy Council, while the prosecutors here have no resources to do their jobs.
And finally from me, in 8 days' time, the Police Service Commission should receive nominees for people applying to post of Commissioner of Police. Do you all see anyone in the police executive or anyone outside of the police executive who the opposition would support as Commissioner?
I don't think that's a matter we should comment on. It's a
think
premature discussion.
We don't know who will apply, who will apply, and I don't believe that it's for us to really have any role in that. The Police Service Commission, has a criteria. I said I want to join the two joint select committees, in fact, which dealt with the Police Service Commission recently, and those are for public hearings. We would have heard their evidence and the kind of process and procedure that they want to go through. All I can say is that we would hope that no high public official intervenes again and squash the process and cost the taxpayer even more money, because we knew that squash process involved the expenditure of public funds to retain consultants and so on. And due to the interference by the government and government officials in that process, the process has started over, and the country was actually without a commissioner of police. When you take into account the interference and then the incompetence of the then Attorney General in legislative drafting, we had no commissioner of police for a significant amount of time, the first time I think in our history as an independent country. So I think the opposition's concern is not who is going to get it, but how they will be going about the process, and to make sure that there's no interference again in that process.
We just have one quick question to clarify the Mr. Amo's affidavit, right? Was it possible for Mr. Amor, when he realized that his affidavit contained not truthful information, could he have withdrawn it at that time?
The thing is that Mr. Amor should have raised it with the court. How the court deals with it, that is a matter for the court. But at the time of the hearing, before the hearing started, communication should have been made with the court to inform them that this particular affidavit is an issue. So that is a matter for the court to deal with respect to withdrawal. And Mr. Amor should have probably given written instructions to Sequel Law that, listen, this thing is false, and maybe we should withdraw it and refile an affidavit and ask for some level of adjournment in order to properly deal with the matter. That was not done. Mr. Amor had made no application to clarify. Faris Al-Rawi made no applications to clarify. Sequel Law made no applications to clarify that particular untruthful affidavit.
The filing of a supplemental affidavit is a normal procedure in courts around the world, including in Trinidad and Tobago. And so I do not think that there is anything abnormal about the filing of a supplemental affidavit or asking for time to put in a supplemental affidavit. It is also not unusual here or in any country in the world for issues to arise on the maybe an hour, sometimes 5 minutes. You recall that I'm running into chambers, asking a judge to see them in chambers to raise an issue 5 minutes before a hearing starts. That could have been done by Sequel Law on the instructions of Mr. Al-Rawi, on the instructions of Mr. Amor, even if he was on vacation, okay. But he says that he spoke to the representative, Al-Rawi. I don't know how he got into this as a representative. He's not the Attorney General anymore, and I don't know if it's proper, but he was there, and he was present on the link as revealed in the transcript. So we found that there was nothing preventing them, and if there was something preventing them, well, they should say what prevented them from raising the matter before the hearing with the judge, seeing that Mr. Amor says that the day before he realized that he had given essentially false evidence to the court in his affidavit.
I think that's all the questions, right?
All right, thank you very much, members of the media, for joining us. And stay tuned. I think we will have our next press conference on Sunday. Yeah.
The United National Congress and the St. Joseph Executive invites all to TNT Speaks, the St. Joseph edition, Thursday, 7th of July, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. at the Arangwes Community Center, Arangwes, located on Mehilal Street, Arangwes. Rowley and his bag of thieves must go. The PNM must go. And that terrible Terry must go. Come out in your numbers, TNT. On Thursday, 7th of July 2022 at 6:30 p.m. at the Arangwes Community Center on Mehilal Road, Arangwes. Talk done. Enough is enough. Stay tuned for further details.